Welcome to the inaugural episode of WinRaw, Web Novel Read Along. It's not the first episode. I had a trial run, but I wanted to save something special for the inaugural episode. So today I will be reading, abridging, making jokes about, and commentaries on Worm by McCrae, which is ostensibly the most famous web novel of all time. There's other ones that are famous for maybe different reasons. I think My Immortal's famous for being perhaps the worst web novel ever. You have stories that were turned into films, web novels that were Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey. But I think those are only famous for their adaptations more so than their web novel forms. That's Twilight. I mean, fan fiction's web novel. I'm counting it. It's the same. So anyway, Worm, most famous web novel of all time, published in 2011 to 2013, and it's like really long. So I'm going to read about an hour-ish. The video will be about an hour-ish. And unlike a lot of the stories and with stuff I've covered, this is not on any sort of specialized website. This is back in the WordPress days where people would take out their own WordPress and just blog and otherwise write their stories there. So this is old school web novel. But right away, let's jump into it. 1.1, Gestation, published June 11th, 2011. Brief note from the author. This story isn't intended for young or sensitive readers. Readers who are on the lookout for trigger warnings are advised to give Worm a pass. And now this is interesting, because trigger warnings there's a link here, it's in blue. So if we click that, oh, this is not what I was expecting. The link brings us to Urban Dictionary, that source for our information, which obviously we know what a trigger warning at this point is. It's vernacular. I guess maybe in 2011, was that not like a term people were like widely accepted where you had to link it? Where you couldn't just link like a dictionary or Wikipedia, you had to go to Urban. I'm not sure if I can fault the author for this. It's silly in retrospect, but it's at the time, yeah, maybe. Class ended in 5 minutes, and all I could think was, an hour is too long for lunch. So 2 notes right away, first sentence. First person, totally fine. I personally feel like that gives it a more young adult feel. Totally fine. But then, yeah, just as a general commentary, not a strong opening sentence for any novel, really. I mean, I guess you get some, like, if you're a high schooler, like, yeah, an hour is too long for lunch, but that's a weak start. And I will say, the last one I did, if you've seen that one, and I'm assuming this one will get more views, that one I spent a lot of time with criticisms and critiquing. I expect... Now, don't quote me on this, but I expect this to be very good in general. So I expect I will make less jokes and have less criticism, but that might not be the case. You're going to get what you get. Since the start of the semester, I had been looking forward to the part of Mr. Gladley's World Issues class where we discussed capes. I fidgeted, my pen moving from hand to hand, tapping or absently drawing some figures in a corner of the page to join the other doodles. My eyes were restless, too, darting from the clock above the door to Mr. Gladley, and back to the clock. Some of this is a little wordy. It's fine, just a little wordy. I wasn't picking up enough of his lessons to follow along. 20 minutes to 12, 5 minutes left before class. I think this is a woman, isn't it? This is a female main character. I guess I wanted to start doing voices for these, but it's going to be really annoying if I do a feminine voice for our narrator, so I'm just going to keep doing this. If we have other people jump in, I'll do that. We get class. We all know what high school like. This is, I'm assuming, American high school, but we all know what high school is like in any capacity. He struck me as one of the popular kids who would become a teacher. He probably thought he was everyone's favorite. I wondered how he'd react if he heard my opinion on the subject. Would it shatter his self-image, or would he shrug it off as an anomaly from the gloomy girl that never spoke up in class? It's a little angsty so far. We set up a popular clique. We have Madison Clements. It's very, very paint by the numbers, high school bully stuff here. The only feminine feature I had going for me was my dark curly hair, which I'd grown long. The clothes I wore didn't show skin, and I didn't deck myself out in bright colors like a bird showing off its plumage. I mean, On one hand, we are getting characterization. We have a voice for our main character. That's good for a web novel. It's very, very basic stuff, though. And then our character goes and eats lunch in the bathroom, which, that's weird. That's the first thing I'm like, okay, that's interesting. She wants to eat and read a book about, I guess it's superheroes. This is a superhero story, right? Like, it mentioned capes before, which I thought was like this, like the cutesy little term for superheroes, and we're talking about triumvirates and protectorates. It's not, I don't think it hasn't been explicit that these are, like, it's just implicit, but yeah, it's weird. Whatever my plan, I didn't even have a chance to finish my Peter rap. The door of the bathroom banged open. I froze. I didn't want to rustle the bag and clue anyone into what I was doing, so I kept still and listened. Occupied, I called out hesitantly. Oh my God, it's Taylor, one of the girls on the outside. I'm assuming that's. Yeah. Okay, that's the right voice. I made a good choice. Exclaimed with glee. I barely heard her add, "Yeah, do it." She tries to get out. Our hero tries to get out, but she can't get out of the bathroom stall. Then above her, I looked up to see what it is, only to get splashed in the face. My eyes started burning, and I was momentarily blinded by the stinging fluid in my eyes and blurring of my glasses. Yeah, it's repetitive. I don't know. I felt like this was going to be really not necessarily well written, but like, I mean, it is easy to read. Like, I don't want to harp on this too much. That's just weird choices. And those are things when you read it out loud doing this, you see a bit more of it. Cranberry juice. They didn't stop there. I managed to pull off my glasses just in time to see Madison and Sophia leaning over the top of the stall, each of them with plastic bottles at the ready. I bent over with my hands, shielding my head just before they emptied the contents over me. This is, which I mentioned basic setup before. This is the basic setup here. Outcast kind of girl that you want to root for. She's got mild bully. Like, these are bullies. These are bullies with a capital B. If you want to write a bully character, like, this is it. Like, it's not blunt or stupid. I've seen that before with these things. We're just like, well, that's so much that it's unbelievable. Like, this is a believable amount of bullying, but at the same time, like, yeah, okay. It's a very basic so far. If the girls pouring, okay, yeah. The door swung open and I glared up at the three girls, Madison, Sophia, and Emma. Where Madison was a cute late bloomer. Let's just stop there. I know this is past tense, so this is like being narrated from a future, but at the same time, in the chain of consciousness, when you're being bullied, you don't throw open the door in anger and be like, she was so cute. Late bloomer. I think it would be better if it was like in a different paragraph, but it's like it's clumped in with the action, like it's all going on at once. Ooh, we got some R-rated language here. That's fun. Which is, it's almost weird with the setup. Like, they took a paragraph to describe the teacher, and you think it would be like some sort of in-class bullying, where like the teacher was like allowing these people to like run ramshot and kind of like be dicks. It's not 100% efficient. I shut my eyes and felt the buzzing crystallize into concrete information. As numerous as stars in the sky, tiny knots of intricate data filled the area around me. I could focus on each one in turn, pick out details. The clusters of data had been reflexively drifting towards me since I was first splashed in the face. They responded to my subconscious thoughts and emotions. As much of a reflection of my frustration, my anger, my hatred for those three girls as my pounding heart and trembling hands were. I could make them stop or direct them to move almost without thinking about it, the same way I could raise an arm or twitch a finger. Okay, so clearly our main character has superpowers. It's been very light, but I think the very much implication is that this is a superpower story, and I didn't know that in. Fair enough. Going in, I knew this was superheroes. But the story itself doesn't do a great job of explaining that. Like, there's like some one-off stuff. But I guess that's almost to an asset because it's been so much focused on the characters. Like, it's not like amazing character work, but it is more focused on the characters, which I appreciate. Okay, back to it. On every surface of the bathroom were bugs, flies, and it's not, should it be capital? Do you capitalize after a semicolon? Yeah. Yeah, I had to double check. You don't capitalize after semicolon. Spiders, centipedes, millipedes, earwigs, beetles, wasps. Okay, so she doesn't just control worms, which I guess, I don't know. I have a crippling phobia of worms, so that's like the most scary thing ever. But I guess it's just bees and bugs, just bugs. Spiders? Oh, spiders too. Are spiders bugs? They are not insects. So creepy crawlies. We could name this to creepy crawlies. If it creeps and it crawls, she apparently can control it on a subconscious level. Some crawled in through a gap where the sink drain entered the wall, while others emerged from the triangular hole in the ceiling where a section of a foam tile had broken off, or from the open window with peeling paint and cigarette butts squished out in the recesses. Some of these sentences are a little on the wordy side, but I really like the descriptive language. Like it's boring. It's like boring high school. It's depressing, but it's a true to life depiction of a boring high school. It's depressing. Yeah. It's like when they said foam tile, I was like, yeah. My practice sessions conducted away from prying eyes told me I could direct a single insect to move, an antenna, or command the gathered horde to move in formation. With one thought, I could single out a particular group, maturity, or species from this jumble and direct them as I wished, an army of soldiers under my complete control. It would be easy, so easy to just go carry on. That was my thought. It's like, where is this going? It would be so easy to just go carry on the school, to give the trio their just desserts and make them regret what they had put me through. The vicious emails, the trash they'd upended over my desk, the flute, my mother's flute they'd stolen from my locker. Was this established? Like, I get like trying to establish like a history or stuff, but you think you'd like, I don't know, because they talked about the bully girls earlier. Like when we were talking about Madison before and the bully girls, it was very like just kind of like high school cliquey. I don't like them. Like you almost should have had like a very like clear like, no, I hate them. Be like, oh, I wonder why, and then you get to reasons why. It's a little weird. However much I wanted to, I couldn't really follow through. Even as I trembled with humiliation, I managed to convince myself to pick up my backpack and head down to the hall. I was going to be a superhero. That was the goal I used to calm myself down at moments like these. It was what I used to make myself get out of bed on a school day. It was crazy. It was a crazy dream that made things tolerable. It was something to look forward to, something to work towards. It made it possible to keep dwelling on the fact that Emma Barnes, leader of the trio, had once been my best friend. What? Okay, now, that's the end of chapter 1, or 1.01. I'm just going to call this chapter 1. Section 1, chapter 1. As far as setups go, all the correct elements are there. All the boxes are checked. I'm not 100% happy with the execution at times. Some weird choices. But you have enough character stuff. You have some drama there with the best friend being a bully, and the main character wants to murder everyone at the school. But it's like, I want to be a superhero instead. Like that's really the clincher. You're like, yeah, okay. As far as first chapters go, pretty good. Chapter 2. My thoughts were on Emma on the bus ride home. Okay, and she talks about her history with him, and like, yeah, middle school friends, we get that. So she turns away from thinking about Emma making friends with Sophie, which is weird that it was Madison that was focused on more than the other two. But then she thinks on the bus ride home, she's like, oh no, the juice took my stuff. The notebook had been my notes and journal for my hero career. The testing and training I'd done with my powers, pages that crossed out name ideas, even measurements I was going to use for my costume in progress. Okay, so I'm assuming like most hero stories, you're going to have like an alias and you don't want people to know you're a hero or even have powers, because if they knew you had powers, they wouldn't be messing with you, right? And so I'm just wondering, especially someone being bullied and might have their stuff stolen, if carrying that on you to school would be the best way. Like here's a complete like even if that wasn't the case, even if like heroes were normal and you're just like, yeah, you're a hero, it's like here's a list of all that I can do and my weaknesses. Like I would, outside of just not writing that down, if I wrote it down, it'd be like in a secret place. I wouldn't put it in arm's length of the bullies, but like, yes, here's a dossier. Oh. After Emma, Madison, and Sophia had stolen my backpack and stuffed it in a wastepacket, I had realized how big a danger it was to have everything written down like that. Same paragraph. Okay. I had copied everything over into a new notebook in a simple cipher and wrote it bottom to top. Okay, you got me. You got me, Mr. Writer. You are smarter than me. She gets off her bus. She goes home. Okay, so the first thing that came to mind was yet another reason to kill the trio. It wasn't a serious thought. I was angry, but it wasn't like I was going to actually kill them. I really like this sort of like edge to the character because that's very true to life. I feel like people like stay away from that writing that way because they're like, I don't want my character to be unlikable. It's more likable having a human reaction like that. Okay, we find about her house. She doesn't come from money. Once again, underdog. That's what you want. We want to root for an underdog. I kind of like Taylor so far. She's not the most interesting character, but as far as high school students go, yeah, you go, Taylor. The first of the spiders started coming in through the open windows and congregating on the workbench. My power didn't give me a knowledge of the official names of the bugs I was working with. Did we need a clarification for that? I mean, why would anyone assume that? That's a weird, like, is that just me? That's a weird assumption to make. Anyway, but anyone could recognize that the spiders that were crawling into the room, they were black widows. One of the more dangerous spiders you could find in the States. Okay, just United States. Unless it's going to get real weird. Maybe it's completely fantasy, but their bite could be lethal, though it usually wasn't. And they tended to bite with little provocation. Hasn't been my experience. One time, I don't know, should I just tell personal stories here? One time I was kayaking out on a lake. I'd been out there for like 20 minutes. And just by happenstance, I looked down at my feet and there was like a whole nest of black widows, like 12, literally 12 of them. And 3 seconds later, I was in the lake and not in the kayak anymore. Holy crap. But I don't know. I felt like that was adequate provocation. At my request, the dozens upon dozens of spiders got into place on the workbench and began drawing out lines of webbing, laying the lines across one another and weaving them into one work. 3 months ago, after I discovered the manifestations of my powers, I had started to prepare for the goal I'd set out for myself. Exercise, okay, yeah. She's a woman with a girl, I don't know, 18. She's a girl. She's a girl with a plan. She exercises. She figures out how to use her powers in creative ways. She does research. She's preparing her costumes. Costumes were harder than one might think. While official teams had sources for that stuff, the rest of us were left to either buy it or put them together. Yeah, so she's making her own costume with the spider web stuff, which this is all great. You want a proactive character who's like, if I or you are in a world of superheroes, you're like, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to take steps to use my powers. I'm going to do all this stuff I'm going to go out there and do it. And so it's like, yeah. It's a proactive character. Not just any spider worked. The Black Widow spiders themselves were hard to find. They weren't typically found in the northeastern states, where it was the key element that made Brockton Bay a tourist destination and a hotspot. Is that a real town? Is Brockton Bay? I don't feel like that's a fake town. Nope, it's fake. Oh, it's okay. And once again, really cool stuff with the power. She didn't just go out and find some spiders. She brought them in. She had them breed and multiply, and she like farmed them. That's all great. Flipped the mental switch that told them to breed and lay eggs as if it was summer. Fed more prey to the hundreds of young that had resulted and had earned countless costume spinners for my trouble. That's a weird sentence, but yeah, I get it. The biggest issue had been that the Black Widows are territorial, so I had to spread them out to ensure they didn't kill each other when I wasn't around to control them. I'm not going to Wikipedia. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you, Taylor. I'm not going to Wikipedia like that, like you did. This okay. To the point where she ensures that they're ready to work when she's done after school. Yeah, I needed a life, but I had a badass costume. This is super enjoyable. Like making clothes, you wouldn't think that's a fun second chapter, but I'm loving it. The fabric was a dirty yellow gray. The armored sections had been made out of finely arranged and layered shells and exoskeletons I'd cannibalized from the local insect population. Chitin. Not to be pronounced chitin. I took biology. I don't actually think it is chitin. I think it's just shells. I guess can insects spin chitin? I don't know. I don't think so. flexible, durable, incredibly lightweight, considering the amount of armor I had put on. I'd screwed up the dimensions of one of the legs, and when I tried to cut it off to start fresh, I found I couldn't cut it with an X-Acto knife. Establishes the quality of the costume and shows that this character is not a master at it and is learning her craft. Great. It's going to be a weird comparison to make, but it's like Brandon Sanderson. Not necessarily a great writer, but in terms of like his magic system and stuff, it's like so well thought out. That's the comparison I'm making. Is this Brandon Sanderson? Is this his pen name before he became a professional? It's written about as good as a Brandon Sanderson book. It was time to do it. I flexed my hand inside the glove. I'd go out next week. No more delays. This weekend, I would be ready. Into chapter 2. My training schedule consisted of running every morning and every other afternoon. In the process, I had picked up a pretty good knowledge of the east side of the city. But once again, in training for 3 months, she's running all around the city so she knows the layout. That's a good idea. I had dyed and painted the costume on Friday, bought temporary costume pieces, belt, the straps for the mask and the lenses on Saturday, and finished the most necessary... Okay, we got it. Yeah, so she looks like a bug. Is this black and yellow? Big yellow beady eyes. Back of the head vulnerable because that's where her hair goes. Got it. It is a little weird that we're starting chapter 3 talking about a costume and that was half of chapter 2. Okay, there's a place called the Boardwalk. It's a big thing in the city. From pretty much any point on the docks, you could see one of Brockton Bay's landmarks, the Protectorate headquarters. Besides being a marvel of... the PHQ was a floating base of operations that a squadron of local superheroes called Home, outfitted with a force field bubble and a missile defense system. It's very comic booky. For whatever reason, it's going to sound really stupid. Whatever reason, I'm picturing the Sydney Opera House. I know that doesn't make sense, but that's my picture for the PHQ in my head. Okay, so we've established the boardwalk, the PHQ, the docks. We're getting the city here. The big city, top 10 in the U.S. Okay, that's the point where I would have known that this is a fake city without Googling it. That's a lot of things, though. A lot of times I'm like, is this real? Should I Google it? It's like, it gets answered. Maybe not timely, but it gets answered. It was just after midnight, and I was crossing the line between one of the nicest parts of town and the town where the crack whores and gangsters lived. The distance between the two was thinner than one might think. So she's out patrolling, and then what does she find? Place your bets. She finds some Asians. Not just Asians. Asians wearing headbands and long sleeve shirt. All wearing red and green. Which is a nice Christmassy color. I know who these guys were. They were members of the local gang that left the tags. Asian bad boys. Asian is spelled A-Z-N. ABB for short. I mean, I don't hate this on principle. Gangs are normally racially separated. The point where I draw the line is where their name is Asian as an A-Z-N. Like, I don't know. That's actually a thing. I'm sorry. It just sounds really stupid. As far as the criminal element in Brockton Bay went, they weren't small potatoes. While the typical gang members were just Koreans, Japanese, all the Asians. Never mind, because you know. Okay. I actually thought it was going to be like a Japanese Yakuza gang or something, but Asians. If you're Asian, you're in the gang. That's just where you belong. India, you're in the gang. Japan, you're in the gang. Mongolia, boom, this gang is for you. I mean, that's very like a U.S. perspective. I'm calling it at this point, this guy is U.S. based because this is a U.S. based story. And is that this idea that when someone says Asia, you can just lump that all together? That's a continent. That's the biggest continent. It's not a homogenous group of people. You have a better chance at saying North Americans. The North American gang. I feel like North America is more homogenous than Asia. Gangs didn't tend to be that racially inclusive as far as who joined, so it's something that the leader had the ability to draw in members from so many different nationalities and keep them in line. What? It acknowledges, okay, once again, me getting called out on my tirades here. So it acknowledges that it's weird, that it's like a multicultural Asian gang, and yet it seems to think, like, if you're going to do like a multicultural gang, if you're going to go full on warriors, why not just make it multicultural? Why is it specifically multicultural Asian? It's weird. It gets weirder. The more patches on the more holes it patches up in the logic, the more I'm just like, then why make this choice? But we've established that their gang leader has united all of Asia. The street was unlit, so my ability to see was dependent on the moon and the few indoor lights that were still on and shining out to the sidewalks. I started actively looking for their boss. There were more gang members coming out of a 2-story building, and they were gathering in the street. They didn't have this atmosphere of people who were just hanging out either. They were expressionless or scowling, and they weren't talking. As gang members do. They stand on the street looking angry and doing nothing. I spotted their boss as the gang pulled away from the door of the building to give him room. I only knew about this guy from what I had heard on the news and written. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, they're not like joking with each other and having a good time. And like, I spotted their boss as the gang pulled away from the door. He was a big guy, but not so big that he would send people running when he walked down the street. Like some people with powers were. He was a little over 6 feet, though, which put him head and shoulders above most of the gang members. He had an ornate metal mask over his face and wasn't wearing a shirt despite the chill. Sprawling tattoos covered his body from the neck down, all depicting dragons from Eastern mythology. Eastern. All of Asia. He went by Lung and had gone successfully toe-to-toe with whole teams of heroes and had managed to keep himself out of jail, as evidenced by his presence here. As for his powers, I only knew what I could scrounge up online, and there were no guarantees there. I mean, for all I knew, he could have misled people about what his powers did. He could have had a power where he was keeping up his sleeve for an emergency, or he could even have a very subtle power that people couldn't see at work. Which, I feel like the next paragraph is going to answer this, because that's been the trend to some capacity. But if he's fought several heroes many times, wouldn't that be publicized like a FBI's most wanted board? Here is Lung. Right here, boom. Photoshop a picture of a Lung on top. Here is Lung. Here's what happened when he fought the heroes. Here is how he got away from the heroes or beat them. Like, I feel like that would be like public discourse if you have like a supervillain of like any capacity running around. Like, populace, here's what you need to know. I'm about to shoot myself in the foot here. The information online and in the papers had told me this. Lung could gradually transform. Maybe it was based on adrenaline, his emotional state, or something, but whatever it was, it made his powers more potent the longer he was in a fight. He healed at a superhuman rate, got stronger, got tougher, got bigger, and he grew armor plating complete with blades at each fingertip. Well, see, now I'm confused because you told me you didn't know what he does, but it sounds like you know exactly what he does. Rumor had it that he even grew wings if he fought long enough. If that wasn't enough, he was a pyrokinetic. Okay, so I guess people can have multiple powers because he's also a pyrokinetic. Create flames out of thin air, shape it, intensify it, and so on. But once again, you're establishing that you know exactly what he can do and that this is whatever. Lung wasn't the only one with powers in the ABB. If you just write it out as ABB, that sounds like a Korean band. But you know, there's the Koreans are here too, so who am I to say? He had a flunky, a scary sociopath called Oni Lee, which is, I mean, Lee. First off, Lee is a genuine name, but at the same time, it's also like the most stereotypical name because of like Bruce Lee and stuff. But then Oni, I'm not super familiar with Asian culture, but Oni is Japanese for demon. I know that. So clearly, his literal name is not Oni Lee. And if Oni Lee is his, like, villain name, why does he have Lee there? Does he just really want people to know that he's Asian? Oni Lee had a distinctive look, and I didn't see him in the crowd. Also, Oni Lee can, like, teleport or create doubles. Not 100% sure what Oni Lee does, and it doesn't really matter. He's not here. Maybe it will set up. But I guess we haven't established that he fought the hero, so I'm going to give it a pass that we don't know what Oni Lee does. So our character, Taylor Worm, is that her superhero name? I don't think it is. If it is, it's yet to be established. She's watching from the shadows. She's seeing they've got butterfly knives and maybe a gun handle. But she's like, oh, that's silly. Lung's more dangerous than 50 people with guns, which I'm not sure that's true. I feel like 50 people, that's a lot of firepower. My investigation paid off. Halfway down the alley, I saw a fire escape that was leading up the back of the building that Lung and his gang were standing in front of. The feet of my costume had soft soles, so I was nearly silent as I ascended. The roof was covered in gravel and cigarette butts, which made me think I wouldn't be nearly so quiet walking over it. Instead, I walked on the raised outside lip of the roof. Well, my thought would be if there's cigarette butts, is like, oh, people come up here regularly. As I neared the part of the roof directly above Lung and his gang of Asian boys, just stick with ABB. Just do that. Don't stop saying Asian boys. Asian's too much for me. I crouched and crawled forward on my stomach. Do a voice here. Lung was snarling. I'm not going to do an Asian accent. What do I make this guy sound like? The children. No, that's too much. What do I make him sound like? This is a pickle. The children. The children. No, I'm not saying it's a little too old. I feel like a gang member would be younger. Golem. The children. Okay, that's too much. The children. The children. Just shoot. Okay, that's good. Okay, I got it. I'll make him a smoker. The children. Just shoot. Doesn't matter your aim. Just shoot. You see one lying on the ground? Shoot the little bitch twice more to be sure. We give them no chances to be clever or lucky. Understand? There was a murmur of assent. Someone else lit up a cigarette. Oh, yeah, see, he probably is a smoker. I could see dark middle of guns reflecting the orange. We already established they're armed. This is redundant. Okay. All of them had weapons. They were going to kill kids? I like the setup. I like that we're getting right into the action. So into chapter. I just feel like there should have been setup to the setup where it's like, I need to go do a hero thing. Oh, TV, there's a gang problem on the east side. Like, it feels like, obviously she did research and stuff, but why is she specifically going after this gang? That's what I want to know. Like, maybe, like, it would have been cool. It would have been cool if she just memorized, had like a list of all the criminals on the east side. It was like, okay, here's what I got, and here's da-da-da-da-da, and that'd be a good excuse why she didn't necessarily know his powers. Like, I kind of forgot he can do this or that. I don't know. But we're getting to the action. Chapter 4 of 6. Let's do 6 chapters. This will be our section here. I felt a chill. A part of me really wished that I thought to get my hands on a disposable cell phone. I didn't have a utility belt, but a space-shaped section of my armor. I was going to say, she definitely said on chapter 2 that she got a belt from a store when she was preparing her start of chapter 3. But I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a utility belt. Although she got spiders, she could make a little pouch to... But the spade-shaped section of my armor that hung over my spine hid a set of EpiPens, a pen and notepad, a tube of pepper spray. Why is she alerted? Why so ever? With the cell phone, I could have alerted the real heroes about the fact that Lung was planning to take a score of his flunkies to go and shoot kids. At least that's what I had heard. I was in a state of disbelief. Okay, so they're sitting here. She's debating what to do. She's like, oh no, I can't alert the heroes. Okay, so it's like a big gathering. It is like, I mentioned the Warriors before. Hopefully that's in the edit. But it is like, just the gangs are coming. I think they're all part of the same. I think they're all Asian, which means they're in this gang. So there's 25 of them here now. As much as I didn't want to face it, there was really only one option that I could have no regrets about. I shut my eyes and focused on every bug on the neighborhood, including the sizable swarm I had gathered on the way to the docks. I took control of each of them. Attack! It was dark enough that I could only tell where the swarm was with my power. That meant I couldn't even tune out the swarm if I wanted to have any idea about what was going on. My brain was filled with horrendous amounts of information as I sensed each bite, each sting, as the thousands of insects and arachnids swarmed over and around the group. So I guess maybe it is just insects and arachnids. I could almost see the outlines of each person just by sensing the shapes of the surfaces the bugs were crawling on. That seems like a lot of sensory information. Like, only having 3 months to do that. It'd be like interesting if like she couldn't do that much at first. It was like, I can control 10 bugs at first. I'm going to get 10 hornets, and each of them's going to sting one of them right in the eye. Like, yeah, I mean, we had just brief mentions of training. But like if you like consider that like 10,000 bugs, or I don't know if a swarm is, tons of bugs. Like that would be crazy. If you had to like do it all individually and like each of them were sending you feedback. I focused on keeping the more venomous types at bay for the time being. I didn't need any allergic thugs going into anaphylactic shock from bee stings or getting serious complications from the bite of a brown recluse. Oh, that's why they have the EpiPens. She's literally trying not to kill people. That's a really good detail. Every time I question it, I'm like, oh, it's a pretty good detail. Except for the questions where I'm like, I don't get it. That seems silly. But some of my questions, which I'm not even used to. Normally when I read anything, I have a question, I'm just like, why'd they do that? Rarely do I have the satisfaction of my questions being answered in the text, and for those questions to arise from a completely intentional choice by the author. I sensed the fire through the swarm before I realized what I was looking at with my eyes. My power told me of the bug's recognition of the heat, but I didn't even have time to devote conscious thought to block out the insects the fire set in motion before the damage was done. To block out the insects. No, that's not me. I know I broke that up. I'm probably going to put that in that way, but my power told me of the bug's recognition of the heat, but I didn't have time to devote conscious thought to block out the insects the fire set in motion before the damage was done. That doesn't make sense. I've reread this a few times now. This doesn't make sense. I think what the author was trying to say, devote conscious thought to block out the insects that were set on fire so that she doesn't get that feedback. I think that's what they're trying to say. I don't think that's what it says, though. I've reread this a few times. I'm not getting that meaning. Okay, the bugs go crazy. They don't like the fire, and it's obviously Lung on fire. We established that Lung's a fireman and a beast man or something. I could see Lung lashing out with streams of fire from his hands, directing them at the sky. I suppressed a laugh, feeling heady with adrenaline. Was that all he could do? I directed the swarm to gather, so those who weren't already biting and stinging were in the midst of the gang. If he wanted to turn his flames on the swarm, he could have to set his own people on fire. The heated air and smells gave me enough information by way of the insects to tell where Lung was in the cloud. I actually really like the fact that she's like just droning it. She's like, I don't even have to hide on top of my building. Can't see me. No chance of danger. Kill him. Kill him. I took a share of the venomous types I'd held at bay and directed them to Lung. A handful of bees, wasps, a number of more poisonous spiders like black widows, brown recluses, and dozens of fire ants. Note that they are clearly mixing up what venomous and poisonous means. Venom is something that bites you, and you get envenomed. Poison is when you eat it. So perhaps there are poisonous spiders and poisonous ants. Actually, I don't think there is that. But in any case, I very much doubt that she's about to shove them into his mouth. Although if that happens, I would love it. He healed fast when his power was working. Everything I'd read online said that people with healing abilities would shrug off the effects of poison or drugs. What about venom? Would they shrug off venom? So I knew I'd have to pump him full of enough venom to overwhelm that aspect of his power. Okay, we're treating these as the same thing. I'm not going to make that joke anymore, clearly. Besides, he was a big guy. Japan and China, same thing. Poison and venom, same thing. I felt a sadistic glee as I organized the attack on Lung. I directed the flying insects to attack his face. With distaste, I focused the crawling ants and spiders on other vulnerable areas. I did my best to ignore the feedback that I got from that particular attack. Yeah, that's gross. I like the fact that she actually has to experience it, though. That's fun. Didn't want the same kind of topographical map that the swarm had provided just a minute ago. Lung was bad news, and I needed him out of action as soon as possible. She was just making fun of him, being like, that's all you got? But I guess she's like, oh, he's kind of scary now. To be fair, we've established that he's covering himself in his buddy is transforming into armor. So it's like, maybe he's going to become too strong. That was a factor. Maybe her character got a little ahead of herself. Rationale aside, I did feel a stab of guilt about taking pleasure in someone else's pain. Which I guess you needed to have that because she has been a little sadistic so far in her fantasy. So, good character balancing out. Sometimes she wants to kill people, but she does feel bad about hurting people. Yeah. I quieted that moment's remorse by reminding myself that Lung had spread tragedy, addiction, and death to innumerable families. He had been planning to kill kids. Lung exploded, no metaphor there. He detonated in a blast of rolling fire that set his clothes, several pieces of litter, and one of his gang members alight. Almost every bug in his vicinity died or was crippled by the wave of extreme heat. I feel like that's the point where she should have had been like, oh crap, we gotta kill him now. The second explosion turned his clothes into rags. He was fireproof? Question mark. I feel like any hero who uses fire, like shoots fire from their body, would have to be fireproof, because otherwise just the sustained heat of just like pew, 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 like you just burn your hand off. That feels like if you suspect they can control fire, you should suspect they're fireproof. That just seems normal. The meager scraps of clothing that covered him were burning away, and fire licked and danced around his hands without him seeming to care. He roared. It wasn't the monstrous roar one might expect, but a very human sound of rage and frustration. So really, we're stuck with a conundrum where it's like, he's getting stronger. I might be in trouble. And then, yes! I focused my attention on a lone wasp and piloted it around Lung's back, up behind his head, and then had it circle around to his face and straight at his eyeball. Did I write this? The wasp touched his eyelash, and he blinked before it could hit the target. The singer only sank into his eyelid, prompting yet another explosion of fire and a scream of rage. Again, I thought, a honeybee this. Yes, keep doing it. I wasn't sure if he eventually got armor-plated eyelids, but maybe I could use the stings to make his eyes swell shut. He shouldn't be able to fight if he couldn't see. And the bee sticks him in the eye. And then he lights himself on fire and just doesn't extinguish it. No more explosion. He's just like, I am the human torch. Actually, that's what it is. He's just the human torch now. That's an effective way to get bugs to off you, I feel like. Surely he was burning up all the oxygen in his vicinity. Didn't he need to breathe? That's a really good point, actually. I really have to give the writer props here for really treating these powers pretty smart. Like, I wasn't like joking when I said Brandon Sanderson before, but it really is Brandon Sanderson-esque, where it's just like he's got one thing he loves, and it's like that's where he likes to live, is just like powers. Let's just talk about how these powers work, the implications for powers. Standing in the street, he turned around, searching for me with the flames that licked and rolled over his body. More scales. You can't find her. And then our character decides, you know what? All of his men are scattered. They're probably going home. Mission accomplished. This is getting a little too dangerous. Which, that's smart. As soon as she puts a foot on the gravel roof, Lung turns around to stare at her. The package of powers he got from his transformation included superhuman hearing. I guess that's why he was establishing that he might have superhero hearing. That's like why she doesn't know what his powers are. Just throw that in. But I don't know. I feel like we can accept that. Just the fact that he's becoming physically more and more able. Like, yeah. You didn't need to make it such a mystery. And at the same time, tell us what he could do. Chapter 5 of 6. You don't probably appreciate what superhuman strength means until you see someone leap from the sidewalk to the second floor of a building on the far side of the street. He didn't make it all the way to the roof, but he came to a point maybe 3/4 of the way up. Okay, so Lung hulks his way up to the building and is clawing his way up. The irony of the fire escape being anything but didn't escape me. Really needs a comma there. Didn't escape me. I wished I could fly. My school offered the choice between all the classes. I hadn't picked physics, but I was still pretty sure that no matter how many I could gather, jumping off the roof with a swarm of flying insects gripping me would just as effective as the 9-year-old superhero wannabes you heard about in the news, jumping off of ledges with umbrellas and bed sheets. I actually had that thought. It was like, I wonder if that would work. I didn't say it out loud this time. I should have, I guess. I should just throw all my speculation out there because it's always going to be addressed. But okay, A, good writing. B, like that's like dark superhero, like satire on the superhero genre. It was like, yeah, in a world with superheroes, 9-year-olds are going to jump off buildings and kill themselves with umbrellas, which I did as a child. I found a bridge with an umbrella and jumped off of it. That's a story. Did not die though. And I guess it happens with or without superheroes. 9-year-olds are going to jump off of high places with umbrellas because you would think that works. It doesn't. They're not strong. I guess if you found one that was strong enough, but the umbrella I had was not strong enough. Reaching inside the convex armor that covered my spine, I ran my fingers over the things that I had buckled in there. The EpiPens were meant to treat anaphylactic shock from allergic reactions to bee stings and the like, and I likely wouldn't do a thing to lung, even if I could get close enough and find a point to inject. I don't think that's true. I think if you injected several EpiPens filled with synthetic adrenaline into someone, like that's going to kill them. There's no coming back from that. Worst case scenario, the injections would supercharge his powers by prompting a surge of whatever hormones or endorphins fueled his powers. Not useful, dangerous at best. Wow. Finally, we disagree about something, because that sounds like a great way to make his heart explode. I had a pouch of chalk dust that was meant for climbers and gymnasts. Chalk dust. As someone who was a gymnast and is still a climber, I've never heard anyone call it chalk dust. It's just chalk. I mean, I guess it's technically dust. Is that slang in the Northeast? Chalk dust? I'm being very pedantic right now. Okay, she's listing all the stuff she has, and it's a list like, hey, here's why I can't use this. Here's why I can't use that. Got it. Pepper spray. Oh, the pepper spray was a gift from her dad. After I started going for my morning jogs for training. Okay, so the dad does not know she has superpowers. That's 100%. He had warned me to vary my route and had given me the pepper spray for protection, along with the chain to clip it to my belt loop so I couldn't be taken and used against me by attacker. Yeah, that's all actually really, really good. Written by a man, too. This is written by a man, which is it's a good amount of encapsulating someone else's experience. Like, yeah, that's yeah. Number one, the treatment of superpowers. Great magic system stuff. Which that's what any superpowers are. Anything supernatural that people use, magic system. Number two, I think the second strength is the people writing. Sometimes it's a little basic, but even when it's basic, you have all the details there to make it real, and you have empathy for these people. Which I think that's what you need. Ideally, people come first, because that's what everyone glomps onto. But I mean, as long as you have that at all, it's what you need for a novel. We've achieved what we need for engagement. Oh, he was 7 or 8 feet tall, judging by the length of his arms and torso. I don't know how arms figures into his height, but okay. His shoulders alone were 3 feet across. Yeah, that's pretty big. Even the one eye that he had open looked metallic, a glowing almond-shaped pool of liquid hot metal. I aimed for the eye, but the spray fired off at a sharp angle, just glancing off his shoulders, where the spray glazed him and ignited in a short-lived fireball. I guess if he has one eye left, at what point do you just really go for the suicide attack with your wasp? Just get the other eye. I don't care if you burn alive. She's really going for it with the spray here. Oh, but it worked! He screamed, letting go of the roof with one hand, clutching the side of his face where his good eye was. On one hand, I like the villain being just defeated by a very mundane thing. On the other hand, I'm not sure I entirely believe it. Yeah, pepper spray hurts, but if you're like a souped-up Hulk who's super strong and frenzied, I don't think pepper spray is going to do that much. Unless it's remember her dad gave her pepper spray for bears? Maybe we skipped over the part where there's also bears on her jogging route. Making a mental note to pick myself up a concealable knife or baton if I managed to live through this, I bolted for this fire escape. Hard R language here. Which I'll include if it's necessary and interesting. He's firing off blasts of fire. She pats herself down, but her costume's not on fire. And then she's worried about her hair. Lungs up and walking around. She's getting hit by a direct wheel of flame. She's crawling to a bar, and her costume seems to work pretty good for that. To a ball. I said bar, didn't I? She curls into a ball. But he is blind. He's like, move, give me something to aim for. Which, that's a pretty exciting continuation of the fight. Said he's slowly being worn down as he gets stronger. I held my breath and stayed as still as possible. What could I do? I still had the pepper spray. But even if I got him again, I was running the risk that he would lash out and bake me alive. I thought he's already blinded. I thought that was the... Never mind. If I moved first, he would hear me and I would get knocked around by another blast of flame, probably before I could get to my feet. Have the birds, not the birds, the bugs go like chirp, 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 chirp by his ears and he can't hear nothing. That's going to happen, isn't it? Now that I've said it, everything I say happens. Lung moved his hands from his face. He blinked a few times and looked around, then blinked a few more times. It was a matter of seconds before he could see well enough to make me out from the shadows. Wasn't pepper spray supposed to put down someone for 30 minutes? No. Not unless you got some crazy pepper spray. How is this monster not an A-lister? Which, that's capitalized. So I guess there literally is a list of villainous threats. Which, that was my idea. There should be. I guess he's not listed just because he's not strong enough, but once again, that doesn't make sense because you put out a list so the community can see like, oh, here's this scary guy. Maybe they just don't want them going after them themselves? I don't know. When I heard the crackling whoosh of flame and wasn't burned alive, I opened my eyes again. Lung was firing streams of flame, aiming for the edge of the roof of the adjacent building, a 3-story apartment. I looked to see what he was aiming at, but I couldn't make anything out in the gloom or in the brief second of light during Lung's flames afforded. And then a massive shape landed atop Lung with an impact I could swear people heard at the other end of the street. The size of a van, the massive object was animal rather than what? The size of a van, the massive object was animal rather than vehicle, resembling a cross between a lizard and a tiger with tangles of muscle and bone where it ought to have skin, scales, or fur. I guess it's a superhero that's come to help her. Lung was now on his knees, holding onto the beast's sizable claws away from his face with his own clawed hands. I mean, if he's on fire for like a couple minutes, people are going to see that like from the Sydney Opera House. They're like, over there, someone's fighting. There were 2 girls, a guy and a fourth identified as a male only because of the height. The tall one approached me while the others hurried to the edge of the roof to watch Lung and the creature duke it out. You really saved us a lot of trouble, he told me. His voice was deep, masculine, but muffled by the helmet. Okay, so the hero squad has come to save the day. Which I actually appreciate the fact that she wasn't able to take him down on her first outing. Be like, yeah, you know what? It is pretty hard. It is pretty dangerous. Withdrawing his hand, the man in black jerked his thumb over one shoulder. When we got word Lung was aiming to come after us tonight, we were pretty freaked. We were arguing strategy for the better part of the day. We eventually decided, so these are the children, which I'm guessing that it's some sort of gang. Perhaps the African children? Ooh. The Asian boys versus the African children. Maybe it's my idea. Maybe it's the North American children. You have Canadians working alongside with Panamanians, because they're all the same. Okay, yeah. Apparently Lee showed up to fight them, but his boss wasn't there, so he left. And then the new group, which I'm really assuming they're a gang. My initial assumption was hero, but gang. And she's like, lots of animals struck him, and then I sprayed him with pepper spray. Apparently, what Taylor did was pretty helpful because they're impressed. They think he's not fighting too well. Introductions. That's Tattletale. I'm Gru. This predates Despicable Me. The girl with the dogs. The girl who had whistled and directed the monsters. She was okay. She's just dressed like a punk rocker. We call her bitch, which is, yeah. I like that. But in the interest of being PG, the good guys in media decided to call her Hellhound instead. It's barely PG. Also, the good guys, so they're not the good guys in the media. They're also villains? Yeah. Okay, I'm sticking with that. Lastly, we have Regent. Okay, so they introduce each other, and Taylor's like, you guys are weird. I'm being quiet because I'm still a shy girl. And they're like, hey, you're a shy girl. But we already knew that. And then they're like, all right, he's defeated. We're leaving because now the heroes are here. That's my synopsis. Which, at some point, you just have to do a synopsis because, on one hand, yeah, it's a really well-written action scene. I can follow everything, and it's exciting. But on the other hand, it's gone on for like 3 chapters. So I'm just like, all right. can only be so much excited. It's a level. You can only maintain tension for so long. Plus, it was done. It was done. Okay, so she's calling herself Bug. A cape is going to show up here in less than a minute. Bug is a horrible superhero name. That's like just the worst. With that, they're gone. Is he okay? Okay, the superhero hasn't come yet, but they're afraid he's going to come. The children Lung had mentioned, the ones I had gone so much effort to save tonight, were bad guys. Not only that, they thought I was a bad guy too. She does her costume like all black with like yellow eyes. I'd assume that was a villain. That's exciting. And that's 1.5. One chapter left. We're almost done for the first section here. That's where I'm stopping. I heard the cape arrive on his souped-up motorcycle. I didn't want to be seen fleeing the scene of a fight and risk being labeled one of the bad guys by yet another person. But I wasn't able to get closer to the street either in case Lung was feeling better. Okay, once again, the largest superhero in the organization in the world is called the Protectorate, spanning Canada and the States, with ongoing talks about including Mexico in the deal. Oh yeah, and the hero's name is Armsmaster. Arms, as arms plural, master, all one word. I was trying to read it as Armsmaster, like Arm Smaster, but no, it's Armsmaster. He's got a grappling hook, so he's like a Batman-ish guy. And then we get some backstory, just some like exposition here, which that's not sarcasm. I actually want exposition at this point. We had our action. Just let me do some world building. The Protectorate east-northeast and were headquarters in the floating force-filled shrouded island that one could see from the boardwalk. This guy was in charge of the local team. He has his own action figures with interchangeable halberd parts. Okay, that's on me. I thought halberd was spelled differently. It is not. He really did look like a hero. Okay, yeah, we get it. His trademark and weapon was his halberd. I would love it if they specified it literally was trademarked. Like I'm thinking like superhero like The Boys or something like that, where it's like satirical, where it's like, the halberd is a spear with an axe. That's literally what a halberd is. Souped up with gadgets and the kind of technology you generally only saw in science fiction. I don't like in science fiction they're like, hey, that's something from science fiction. Like that, it's sort of like a meta joke. It doesn't work. It's never worked for me. Because for these people, this is real life. Like you wouldn't go outside and be like, that airplane is something out of science fiction. It's just an airplane. We have airplanes. These guys have superheroes with tools. It's very much like a meta, like, it's specifically like an aside to the reader, like, it's weird for you. But it's not in this world. Why would it be weird? No. You want to fight me? Give him a heroic voice. You want to fight me? He called out. I'm a good guy, I said. I'm not doing that for her. I'm a good guy, I said. You don't look like one. That stung. Especially coming from him. It was like Michael Jordan saying you sucked at basketball. I mean, compared to Michael Jordan, don't we all? That's not intentional, I responded, not a little defensively. I was more than halfway done putting the costume together when I realized it was already looking more edgy than I intended, and I couldn't do anything about it by then. There was a long pause. Nervously, I turned my eyes from the opaque visor. If you saw someone defeat a supervillain, why would you assume they are a supervillain? Especially if they're just sitting there hanging out like, yo, I was waiting for you to show up. I don't know. We got our meet cute here. I'm assuming this isn't a romance, but she's in high school. I haven't come up with a name yet. Yeah, don't give him the name Bug. Bug's stupid. Okay, there's some talking. It's like, hey, we have a ward program where small kids like you can be like, join us. And she's like, I'll think about it. I'm guessing, speculatively, Emma, the queen bully, is going to be in the ward program. Speculation. You get Long, I asked, to change the subject from the wards. I was pretty sure that he was obligated to try and induct new heroes into either the Protectorate or the wards, depending on their age, to promote the whole agenda of organized heroes who are accountable for their actions, and I really didn't want to get him on my case about joining. Some of these sentences are way too long. That was, okay, I'm going to count the words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 52 words. That is obscene. Should not have a 52-word sentence anywhere. Unless it's that one passage from Blood Meridian. Don't do that. Lung was unconscious, beaten, and battered when I arrived. I pumped him full of tranquilizers to be safe, and I'll pack him up on my way. Good. With him in jail, I feel like I accomplished something today. The only reason I fought because I thought he was going to shoot some kids. I only realized later that it was talking about some other villains, which is... I'd probably want to make that known. And then so you have the aside where she tells him all the stuff that happens. And then he seems to be shocked that the other villain group knew he was coming. Although maybe did they know he was specifically coming? Or just that a hero was coming? Because I would assume a hero was coming. They're slippery. On a few occasions, we managed to get in on a toe-to-toe fight with them. They either win or they get away more or less unscathed or both. We know so little about them. Gru and Hellhound were working on their own before Draw. Okay, we get backstory, where the story is going. We're setting up the story after this section. It kind of surprised me to hear one of the top-level heroes admitting to being anything less than perfectly on top of things. That is a nice detail. I do like that. It's funny, I said after a few moments, thought they didn't seem that hardcore. Gru said they were kind of panicking when they heard Lung coming after them, and they were casually joking around when the fight was going on. Gru was making fun of Regent. They said all this in front of you, he asked. I shrugged. I think they thought I was helping him out, the way Tattletale talked. I think she thought I wanted it to happen a third time, though. Could you have taken them in a fight? Armsmaster asked me. I started to shrug and winced a little. I was feeling a little sore in the shoulder where I'd been tumbled on the roof after being blasted by the flames. Let's get some detail. I said, like you said, we don't know a lot about them, but I think that girl with the dogs, Hellhound, Armmaster said, I think she could have kicked my ass on her own, so no, I probably couldn't have fought them. Okay, so there's a lot of talking here. Consequences. We have a second superpowered flunky named Bakuda. She's a woman from Asia. She made her first appearance and demonstration of her powers by way of a drawn-out terrorism campaign against Cornell University. That's so specific. Did this guy go to Cornell? I don't know. That's weird. Lung brought her to Brockton Bay after she was foiled by the New York Protectorate. Okay, then apparently heroes have different classifications. There's a Tinker classification, it covers anyone with powers that give them an advanced grasp of science. This is more and more Sanderson as I saw. I'm going to stop. No more comparisons, but yeah, just like the very hard magic system where it's like, these kind of heroes are this and they can do that, and it's very specific. And okay, so yeah. Anyway, tech-based heroes are called tinkerers. Armsmaster was a tinkerer, unless he got his stuff from someone else. Bakuda's specialty is bombs. If I Google Bakuda, bomb in Japanese, translation, it just came up with Nagasaki. Bakudan! Bakuda! Oh my goodness. This is... Just the names. Let someone else name your characters. And I guess that's probably like a superhero name. I guess that's fine. Anyway, I'm really getting off topic here. It's been going on for a while. Okay, so he invites her to join. She's like, I'll think about it. Okay, and he's like, don't credit me. So you got all the credit, Armsmaster. You take Lung in. Okay. And then there's one interlude. We'll cover this real quick. I'm just going to summarize the interlude because it's an interlude. But, okay. It's from the dad. Okay, the dad. They're talking about 1982. He's watching TV, and there's like a guy who appears on an ocean liner. He's a gold man. Oh, okay, so the gold man is the first superhero. He wears a white suit, and that's kind of when superheroes started, and he helps out with times of crises. So we got exposition on the television. The dad, Danny, he's like, okay, I'm going to stop watching television now. That's actually a good accent. That'll be Danny the dad. He talks like this. He found her room empty. Oh, he's not talking. He found her room empty. And it took her 3 hours to return. They're divorced or separated? Okay, separate. Yeah. So he misses his wife, but his wife left him. So he's kind of sad too. This family is a sad family, and we're rooting for them because they're kind of like, aw. And then Taylor comes home and goes like, I don't want to talk right now. I'm going to bed. And it's just a completely character-based chapter outside of the beginning exposition on the TV. And it's like, okay. And it sort of falls in line. It's like a companion piece to the first chapter. We're like, okay, this is nothing revolutionary, but for what it is, it's good. You're checking all the boxes there. So that is Worm. That is the entirety of section 1 of Worm. Impressions. Good. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, we just got started out, but I do like the author knows what they're doing certainly to some extent here. And that is like just a slow. We're gonna start and establish our characters. We're gonna establish this and this, and it's like okay, and then we get to the action where you have a very long action scene, which is well written. But I'm not in love with it, but it's very good so far. Like if I was going to do a review like I did with everything else, like it'd be a 5 out of 5. Like it's pretty good for the most part. There's a few things here and there I'm like that's silly, but there's a lot to appreciate here. This is something where someone thought about what they were writing. On one hand, it's a low bar, but on the other hand, it's a very high bar. So just some quick predictions. Where's the story going to go from here? That's actually kind of a cheap shot. She's be like, I'm not going to join. Do I want to join the heroes? I don't know. The gang. She's going to help the heroes infiltrate the gang. She's going to join the gang in order to get their information to the heroes and report back. But she's going to realize that she can use the gang to take down the Asians. I'm saying that unironically. She can leverage the gang to take down the Asians in a way that perhaps the heroes could not. And so she's going to be with the gang longer than she intended, and that's going to create a moral conflict eventually in personal drama. Because she's a hero, she wants to be a hero, but now they're her friends and they've like faced life and death together. So that's my prediction. It's an exciting story. I like that. Especially the drama element of having to befriend and like actually like become endeared with people who are like objectively bad. That's a fun moral quandary. That's some fun personal drama. But my outside prediction is Emma, who is a horrible person, is one of the warders. Wards? A warder is not from this series. That's something else. But a ward. And perhaps Taylor doesn't join the heroes because she's like, I'm ready to turn my friends in. And it's like, oh, you in the war. The heroes are the bad guys. That'd be fun. I'm probably making this more interesting than it's going to be, but it's well regarded. So what do I know? But no, really good. I'm very happy reading that. Not a ton to make fun of here, just some really wonky sentences. And not too much to talk about in structure or anything, because, they did it right. That's this my abridged reading. Let's call these abridged readings. I'm going to keep the title, but this is my abridged reading of Worm. And if any of these that I'm doing, if people really like, I'll come back and do another section. But let me know what you think. Have you read Worm? And next time I'll go ahead and I'll definitely make sure to do something from my backlog. I'm not going to do back-to-back Worm videos. If I have a popular series that people really like and like do more of that, I'll do like every other one, just because I have an obligation to do those backlogs. A lot of people want me to read their stuff. This is the most fun way to do it, though.